Hello and welcome to Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio. This is Stefan, your host, British by birth, American by choice. The Founding Fathers crafted some remarkable documents that led to the creation of a great country founded on liberty and self-reliance. I have lived in the Euro-socialist nightmare, and I'm doing what I can to return this country to the vision that the Founding Fathers gave us. We need to strive to rebuild that shining city on the hill, for without us, the world has nowhere to turn for freedom. For the next hour, I will be presenting news, views, and guests that help keep the true spirit of America alive. And blasting off into space, yes, it's another episode of Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio. This is Stefan, your Patrick Come Lately, welcoming you to episode 334 of Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio. And we've got, as usual, a lot to talk about. And I do want to remind my listeners, though, if you're listening to the live show on Tuesday evening, and for those of you that don't listen, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, and obviously the time zones in between as well, it goes out live, except that next week and the week after, it will not go out live. So the show will be broadcast, hopefully, on the usual rebroadcast networks. I will be sending pre-recorded shows to them. And here on Spreaker, if you're used to listening to the live show, I will be uploading these pre-recorded shows. In actual fact, one of them will probably be recorded, I hope, tomorrow or Thursday. Maybe Friday, just depending on how things go. But I will be recording it live, but just not in the normal schedule. The first show that goes out will be, on the 13th, and it will be our annual 9/11 remembrance. Interview with a firefighter who was very closely involved. Was close to when the towers came down and lost a lot of friends there. Very poignant show always, and I think I opened it up with the words, we always said we would never forget, and yet we seem to be forgetting. So I like to bring the show back every year to help us remember that we said we would not forget. And the second show is the annual Constitution show, and I will take a little bit out of the Constitution and discuss it and give my foreigner-like interpretation and analysis of what I think it means, which might be a load of old blarney, but that's for my listeners to decide. But my thoughts on the matter, and maybe slightly different to what most people think. But anyway, see what you think. Listen to the show. It will be out there. And like I said, those of you that are used to listening on this regular schedule, you can come out at this regular schedule time and just click on the recordings up there. So that'll be episodes 335 and 336 that will be out there. Anyway, but what about tonight's show? A lot going on. I think the biggest message is that now 2-3 weeks in a row, the Donald has been behaving himself and has really been making inroads. And this has been proven by the polls that have been coming out. All of a sudden, 3 weeks ago, everybody had written off Trump, even though it was still in August, and people saying, small number of people said, oh, don't take any notice of the polls. It's way too early. On the other hand, there were a bunch of people said, no, it's all done. Hillary's lead is too far ahead. These were mostly people on the left, obviously. She's too far ahead. You might as well give up, Donald. You're done. It's all over. Bye-bye and whatever. That didn't happen. So he fought back. He did what he thought was right, and it seems to be right. I'm sure his new campaign team has been helping him with that. And bit by bit, he closed the gap. And now in a number of key battleground states, he is either level within statistical, actually level, or even ahead of Hillary. Now, I'm not going to fall into the trap of those left-wing pundits and say it's all over for Hillary. The polls have turned against her and forget about it. Right now, in essence, they are level. It is a tight race. But as for writing off Trump, no way he's coming back. But polls are polls. Look at Brexit. And I hope to get to Brexit for a very different reason a little bit later. But look at Brexit. Even the night before, they were predicting a 3 or 4% win for the stay group, and it turned out to be about that for the leave group. So that was a huge shift from what the polls were saying. So polls are polls. They can go either direction, right? They can be skewed and therefore kind of giving you the wrong impression. They can be inaccurate and therefore giving you the wrong information. So let's just hang on. Let's not get, if you're a Trump supporter, let's not get too happy. If you're a Hillary supporter, do get sad because she's going to lose anyway, irrespective of what the polls say, because we know Donald's going to win. But for the moment, you can just be yourself, because you never know with the polls and what can happen between now and Election Day, right? We're just at the beginning of September. We've got all of September, all of October to go through. That's 7 or 8 weeks that we still have to go through. That's a lot can happen. All sorts of things can surface on Donald Trump's side. Things could happen on Hillary's side. Julian Assange was on Hannity today. All of a sudden, he's appearing on all sorts of Fox programs, and he's still saying that he has information that will really, really have an impact on Hillary's campaign. He comments on some of the things that have happened already and sort of says, how can America be so stupid to have someone who obviously either doesn't have a mind, right, because she can't remember things. According to the FBI report that came out, she said she couldn't remember things 39 or 40 times. Or it's either she is suffering from Alzheimer's or some other senility type disease and she can't remember things, or she's lying. Now, strangely enough, staffers on Hillary's team, when they were asked questions, they can't remember. Something like 350 times, roughly. They couldn't remember things. So is this some kind of disease, right? Hilliaritis? Maybe that would be a good name for it, wouldn't it? Hilliaritis. Because they can't remember stuff either. So somehow, I don't think it really is senility. I just think it's plain lying. And this is the party line that has been put out. Everybody says they can't remember things. That's the way we can get round these nasty questions that these nasty Republicans are asking all of us. Well, I think the American public are beginning to realize that they're being hoodwinked, is probably the best word, hoodwinked. We're searching for a good word there, one that I can use on the radio, because I was going to use something else. But anyway, yes, so hoodwinked. And they're realizing that they are being lied to, that Hillary didn't lose her memory. She just lost her integrity. But we'll see what will happen. Well, I'd like to say hi to Paul, who's arrived in the chat room, missing Rex tonight and Mary. And we had David in and out, although David said right now he has to do a lot of driving, so he's very tired in the evening. So hopefully he's listening to the recordings. If you hear this, we miss you, David, but understand, don't overtire yourself staying up late for this show. Catch the recordings, and when you have a better opportunity and don't have to drive so much, because we want you in one piece. We need all the support we can get. So Paul has arrived, so good evening to you, Paul. Thanks for coming. And let's see, so the shifting polls, like I said, number of battleground states where he's either within statistical equal or actually equal, or one or two, and I think Ohio was a key one, where he's actually a couple of points ahead. Again, that's sort of still a statistical tie. It's within the margin of error. But the interesting thing is where he's definitely leading has now is happening in the independents. 3 weeks ago, it was 50-50 roughly, with perhaps a small lead for Hillary. Now, Hilliar is something like about 35%, and Donald Trump was up at 60% of the independent people, at least in I think in the Ohio poll that Fox commissioned. So interesting to see. Like I said, the polls are shifting, but let's not put everything on the polls, because one of the things that I think everybody is aware of, the Clinton machine, the ground game of the Clinton machine is huge. They are very, very strong in that respect. And I think Donald Trump may not have the same ground game. And there are enough of the never-Trumpers on the GOP side that are not going to be helping him with that ground game. So that's definitely going to be a weakness. So he's really going to have to get a number of percentage points ahead of Hillary to negate the effect of her ground game. Now, do I think he can do it? Yeah, he's got another 8 weeks. If he can continue on the same track, I'm sure he can get up to 5, 6, 7, 8% ahead of Hillary in effective votes, and then probably maybe 3 or 4% in actual votes when it comes to November 8th. But who knows? Politics is a fickle game, and it's who knows what can happen. So we'll just have to wait and see. Okay. So I do want to change tack a little bit here, but we're going to continue to talk about Donald Trump. This is a piece I found on the internet, and I think it's a good one to bring up, because again, I always say this show is about providing you, my listeners, with information that you can use and hopefully share with other people. I'd like to be a Rush Limbaugh and have millions listening to me. I know I don't have those numbers, but you, the listeners, can help by spreading the messages that I bring. It's not about me giving you a message. I'm very honored and proud that you like the way I put things and you like to listen to me. So thank you, listeners, for that. But I also would like to give you homework and say, please take these messages, because it's not about me, but it's about the messages that I bring you. Please take what you find interesting in these messages and pass it on to your friends, acquaintances. Now, here's one that I think is a good one to use against people who sort of say, well, I can't vote for Donald Trump because he's nasty, he's mean, and he mocks people with disabilities. And you've probably seen it time and time again on the TV ads that Hilliar is running, where she claims that Donald Trump mocked a reporter's disability. And you see him up there shaking his hands and whatever. And I have to say, initially, even I sort of thought, well, maybe that wasn't the quite the right way to put things. Well, maybe it's all a lie, or as the commentator who wrote about this said, just another lie. So the ad shows Trump making these spastic movements as he talks about a New York Times reporter, Serge Kovaleski, right? He suffers from a congenital condition, which I won't even try to pronounce, but he's got it. There's only one problem about this. Although this particular condition causes restricted joint movement, it does not cause spasms. Think about that, folks. It doesn't cause spasms. Now, what is the video that Hillary keeps playing, showing? It shows Trump kind of looking as if he has spasms. But this reporter doesn't have it like that. Now, what it turns out is that Trump has described other people this way as well, with this sort of waving arms and spasms. He used the same movement describing his closest Republican rival for the nomination, Senator Ted Cruz, during the primary campaign, and he doesn't have any disability. Now, notice in the Clinton ads, they'll show the video of Trump making these movements, and then they never show a video of the reporter himself. If they show anything, it's a still shot. Same with a lot of the mainstream media when they show the video, and then they'll show a headshot of the reporter, but not a video. And why is that? Because he doesn't suffer from spasms. He doesn't move the way that Donald Trump moves when he was talking about that reporter. Now, Trump started against this reporter when he was talking. You know, at one point he said a large number of people in New Jersey cheered when the World Trade Center Twin Towers toppled on 9/11, and he actually referred to an article that Kovaleski had written. So this is where his beef was. When asked about it later, Kovaleski claimed he couldn't remember it, and he didn't flail his arms when he did so. But what did Trump do? He waved his arms and said, "Oh, I can't remember. But Trump says he's never actually met the reporter, so he doesn't know how the reporter moves, and so he couldn't be copying him in any way. And Trump actually does that. Like we said, he did that same movement for dear friend Ted Cruz. Well, friend, but anyway, Ted Cruz. So he can't mock a condition if he doesn't know what condition the guy has and how the guy moves. But at that very same rally, Trump used that same mannerism to mock someone else, not Ted Cruz this time, but a non-disabled general. At that time, he said, "Oh, ISIS is very tough," again, flailing his arms. So perhaps it's an odd way to communicate, but is he making fun of a disabled person? Clearly not. So Trump's not a very good actor, but he's totally innocent of making fun of a disabled person. Now, let's think about the mainstream media. What did they do? They were at Trump's speech. They were filming it. They saw him doing the identical imitation of a general during that same speech with that same movement. So they knew damn well that Trump does the arm-waving routine whenever he's pretending to be a flustered person. But they never allow the public to see the clip of Trump doing the same imitation of a general. Isn't that hypocrisy? Isn't that even lying? Don't you think? I do. Okay, folks, I see I'm a little late for the commercials here, so hang on a moment, and I will be right back.
You can lose 10, 20, 30 pounds or more with Maximum Slim's first ever rapid weight loss guarantee. Today, you get Maximum Slim, an advanced fat and carb blocker, absolutely risk-free. The all-natural ingredients in Maximum Slim are a powerful weight loss combination. The Maximum Slim formula turns your body into a fat-burning furnace that supercharges your weight loss. Advanced fat and carb blocker stops the breakdown of sugar so your body doesn't store it as fat. Today, you'll get both of these products absolutely risk-free with no obligation. Only pay shipping. There are no expensive meal plans or exhausting DVDs. Just take Maximum Slim twice a day. It's fast, simple, and now it's guaranteed. Look, you can start losing weight today or not. Go back to your high school days and wear your favorite jeans again. Guaranteed. Call now and get both weight loss formulas free. Call 800-451-0228. 800-451-0228. That's 800-451-0228.
Doc, you gotta give it to me straight.
All right.
'Cause I'm dying here. I mean, take a look at this letter from the IRS.
Oh, my.
This is killing me, Doc. I tell you, it's killing me.
Cheer up, my friend.
Huh?
The tax doctor is here. My diagnosis tells me that you're going to be just fine.
Really?
The tax doctor will not rest until we find you the best possible tax settlement.
Really, Doc?
Guaranteed.
If the IRS claims you owe them $10,000 or more in business or personal back taxes, call a tax doctor right now. We could save you up to 75% if you qualify. Guaranteed or you pay nothing. Call right now for free details.
800-917-8546. 800-917-8546. 800-917-8546. That's 800-917-8546.
You're listening to Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio, broadcast on the internet, and also available at archives.patrickcomelately.us, a proud member of the Red Nation Rising Radio Network. And we're back from those commercials. Just want to remind listeners, especially on the stations that rebroadcast me, including, of course, our terrestrial stations down in South Georgia, North Florida, I think it's 107.5 WHC. But to really find out what the terrestrial stations are, go to www.patrickcomelately.us, click at the top of the page on syndication, and you can find out all of the stations that and networks that rebroadcast my shows. And of course, you can always come to Spreaker here as well at radio.patrickcomelately.us, pick up the later shows, prior shows, or you can go to archives.patrickcomelately.us, where there are also copies of the recordings. And although it's fairly quiet in the chat room tonight, do join us one night, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, and all time zones in between. It can get quite fun. It can get quite rowdy, but then occasionally we have the quiet night like tonight. If you are listening to the rebroadcast or you're listening to one of the recordings, then obviously you can't participate in the chat room. So just send me an email, stefan@patrickcomelately.us, with your comments, questions, feedback about the show. Love to hear from my listeners. If you don't want to use an email, you can also go to the website, www.patrickcomelately.us, and fill out, there's a contact form there. Fill that out, and that will get transmitted to me, and I can answer your questions from that particular channel as well. If you do email me or you use the contact page, then I will try and answer you directly, but also we'll try and work your questions and comments into a future show. Remember, it will be a couple of weeks before I can work it in, because the next two shows will be pre-recorded, will not be broadcast live at the usual time, due to a small trip I'm taking to Europe for a family wedding. Now, talking about Europe, maybe let's talk about Brexit. Now, you know, a few weeks ago, 2-3 months even now, time's going so fast, Britain decided to leave the European Union. They had a referendum, and as I mentioned earlier in the show, to everybody's surprise, the polls said that Britain was going to stay. But when push came to shove, when the votes were counted, it turned out that the Leave people had won, and Britain is now on a path to leave the European Union. Now, prior to the election, and even immediately after the referendum, all the pundits, all the economists, etc., were warning that if UK voters decided to Brexit, they would bring down an economic crisis on the country. Now, and you can see, folks, I am not an economist, because I kind of agreed with them. I said, yeah, Britain's probably going to have a hard time for the first couple of years, but they will have a bit more. They'll have a bit more benefit after a couple of years. Once things kind of stable out, once they've actually left the European Union, and then maybe a year or two after that before things really get back on track. Well, guess what? Britain today, 2 months later, is actually doing quite well, and it's actually seen a bit of a boost. Right now, so all these economists, the IMF, people in universities, well, we know how clever they are, right? All said, it's going to be a disaster for Britain. Even the Prime Minister, David Cameron, said, it's going to risk pensions. It's going to risk the British equivalent of Social Security. President Obama said Britain would have to go to the back of the queue to ink trade deals with the United States. Well, Britain is showing how real, true, non-crony, free market economics can actually correct political mistakes. And the political mistake was joining the EU in the first place. Now, after the vote, the British pound did go down. Financial traders believed all the warnings from the economists and from the government and ditched the currency. Before Brexit, the British pound was worth about $1.48. 2 months later, it's worth about $1.32. So it's about, 16 cents less. So let's say it's about 12% drop. That's a fair bit. And the pound has also dropped against other currencies. What it meant was this summer that Britain had a record number of visitors. And the tourists came there and spent a record amount of money because they were getting a good bang for their buck. So in the month before Brexit, airline reservations were down compared to the previous year. In the 2 months following, they've jumped 4.3%. And a lot of the people coming, especially wealthier tourists, are buying jewelry and watches and all sorts of expensive consumer goods, which is good for the economy. Other parts of the economy doing well too, because this infusion of this cash, even though the pound became worth less, there was a lot of money coming into the country. So consumer confidence, domestic spending are both up. Retail sales were up in August. Manufacturing and home sales reports were good as well. So it's not that bad. Now, Britain's not officially out of the European Union, but that's going to take a year, 2 years, 3 years. The European Union want it to happen quickly. Technically, Britain's allowed, I think, at least 2 years to do it, but they haven't gone yet. So there's still a lot to happen. They still need to set up trade and immigration agreements with Europe and the rest of the world. But the big advantage for Britain is it is a buyer of other countries' goods. Germany sells more stuff to Britain every year than any other country except the United States. So Germany's not going to be in a hurry to have a trade agreement that will stop trade going to Britain, because it would lose $50 billion of its annual trade surplus, including $18 billion in car sales. United States as well is a huge British trade partner. Right? We sell Britain $56 billion in goods and services a year, and we buy $58 billion. So it's about even in and out, but we do a lot of trade. So America's not going to cut off trade, in spite of what Obama did when he tried to intervene. What about migration? Well, people who are against Brexit were warning that Britain has harmed its ability to attract top scientists, bankers, and the like. Why? Britain can set its own immigration rules now, and it can prevent low-income, unskilled workers coming in from the Eastern Bloc, but can still say, yes, we will allow highly qualified people to come in, and I'm sure they will do it. And it can decide if it does want to allow in low-wage, unskilled labor from the Eastern Bloc, but they can choose to do it on their own terms instead of having this freedom of movement from the EU, where basically Britain could not stop these people coming in. And Europe can't force Britain to take all these low-wage workers. So, folks, it's pretty good. And the final one is they were warning that Britain was going to lose a lot of European Union subsidies on everything from farming to university research. But as I mentioned in earlier shows, Britain actually pays more money into the EU than it gets back. So if it's not going to be paying that money in a year or 2 years' time, it can keep that money in its own pocket and decide what to do with that money itself. So Britain still has problems. Things are still going to go wrong. It still has. It's using cheap credit to allow people to buy houses and to spend money. And when the cheap money stops, if the depression continues, any kind of economic collapse, that will cause a recession, but not Brexit. So anyway, so good news for Britain. Brexit not as bad as they thought. Well, I see time again for another commercial. So I will say, folks, hang on. I will be back shortly.
Patriot come lately. British by birth. American by choice. Just like the Founding Fathers. The voice of the conservative resistance.
This is Stefan, your Patriot come lately, proud to be on Red Nation Rising Radio. These can be dark and depressing times, but Main Street USA finally has a competitive voice to traditional mainstream media outlets. And it's screaming at all hours, 24/7, we want our country back. America, it's time to wake up, expose the regressives, and keep listening to the new dominant force in conservative internet talk radio, the Red Nation Rising Radio Network, powered by ICRN.
Not too long ago, it felt good to withdraw your cash from the bank, didn't it? For a vacation or a new car. But today, withdrawing your own cash has become risky. Pat Boone here for Swiss America. According to The Secret War, a new Swiss America white paper, I learned that all banks are now required to spy on you and me for the government, and then report any financial behavior deemed suspicious or unusual. You must read The Secret War. It's free. Truth is, I believe the government's new war against cash is really a war against us all. But the secret is now out. So please, Get and read The Secret War.
Call 800-516-3405. 800-516-3405. 800-516-3405. Call right now. That number again is 800-516-3405.
You're listening to Patriot Come Lately Talk Radio, broadcast on the internet, and also available at archives.patriotcomelately.us, a proud member of the Red Nation Rising Radio Network.
And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down. Man's old age dream, the ultimate in individual freedom consistent with law and order, or down to the ant heap of totalitarianism.
And just a little reminder there as we go a little bit past the halfway point of the show, of good old Ronnie, and just reminding us, if you like, what this election is about, just as much as when he uttered those words so many years ago. What are we talking about now? 20, 30, probably about 30, roughly 30 years ago, I would imagine that he uttered those words. But it is true. It's not left or right. It's integrity versus lies, fraud, pay for play, all those things. Now, I said earlier on that Trump is doing better in the polls. By playing this clip, I'm not going to say that Trump is another Reagan by any means. But we have seen that in everything he's said and done to date, he is thinking about the American people. And I think it's very interesting if you listen to the speeches. Now, I find it difficult to listen to Hilliar's screeching speeches, because it's just that a lot of the time she's screeching. If she's not screeching, she's coughing. But the parts I have listened to, and maybe they're mainly just the sound bites. Like I said, I find it difficult to listen to a whole speech. If you listen to the sound bites, all she's ever talking about is Donald Trump. I haven't really heard her articulate anything in the way of policies or what she's going to do. No, everything is Donald, Donald, Donald. Think about it. The last 2-3 weeks, while Donald continues to attack Hilliar and the Democrats, he does it by saying, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what they're not going to be doing, or this is totally different to what they're doing. So he's really turned around into this mode of being positive, giving something of substance, and then showing how contrasting what he's suggesting with what Hillary is suggesting, if she's suggesting anything. And the things that she suggests, for example, the 550% increase in the number of Syrian refugees, when we don't know, who they are, what they're coming here for. Why would she even suggest that? Why is she so stupid? But she's doing that. Just time and time again. And quite frankly, I'm glad that they seem to be level now in the polls. It's perhaps that the American people are finally waking up, but I'm sort of going, but folks, we blamed ourselves as Republicans for being asleep at the wheel and letting Obama get in. But people on the left, you're asleep at the wheel as well. letting Hillary, believing Hillary, voting for Hillary when there's so much bad that she's doing. And it's interesting to see how surrogates, how they sort of, how they're trying to explain what she's done, why it's not bad, etc. And they come up with the most fantastic stories of why this is not really bad. Or they're sort of mumbling something. The Dutch have a nice expression, talking with a mouth full of teeth. Yeah, and just sort of mumble, and not really saying anything of value, but just trying to skirt around the issue because there's nothing they can say. They don't realize how bad things are. Anyway, have to say hi to Rex, who arrived in the chat room. As you say yourself, Rex, better late than never. But it is, but it's nice to see you. Okay. And yeah, in the chat room, Paul and Rex talking about things. Hilliar, the fact that she hasn't held a press conference. Well, she held one on the plane with a couple of the reporters at the front of the plane, but then had to run off because she had another coughing fit. But that wasn't a press conference, right? So they're keeping her very well isolated from the press. And why? Because they know, number one, she can't talk like Donald Trump, and they are likely to ask awkward questions which she might not be able to answer, and that's going to look really bad when they start cutting the sound bites. And she has a mouthful of teeth, as the Dutch say, and she can't answer the questions. So in some ways, a number of people said they're doing the right thing. Hillary should not do a press conference, but it doesn't look good, folks. Even if it is better for her, and it might be the right strategy, it doesn't look good. And so it's going to be very interesting when these debates come up. Now, the first one is a town hall type one where they basically, I think, have two separate sessions. Of course, having Matt Lauer as the moderator on that, who's apparently been very closely connected with the Clinton Foundation, although they've tried to hide that. He's not really very, very neutral. So we'll see what comes out of that discussion. And I saw on the internet somebody sarcastic posting sort of said, Mr. Questions for the town hall. Mr. Trump, can you perhaps explain how the quantum reaction between two dissociated particles might have an impact on the votes of people, and et cetera, right? Very scientific, very thing. And Mrs. Clinton, could you tell me what's your favorite color? Now, folks, see? Mrs. Clinton was able to answer this question very quickly and easily, whereas Donald Trump just didn't know what to say. So he must be pretty dumb. Now, that was all in jest, but I wonder what will happen. Anyway, we'll see shortly. I think the face-to-face debates are going to be a lot more interesting. Looking forward to those. And I will be back from Europe for those, and we will be discussing those both before and after on the show. And so interesting choice. So now we have Anderson Cooper, of course, and of course Chris Wallace on the third and last debate. So the last one before the election. He is Fox News, but remember, Chris Wallace is a registered Democrat, so there are no Republicans in any of those moderating any of those debates. Strange, isn't it? Why do the Republicans allow that to happen? Right? Isn't that a good question? Why, if there are 3 debates, or 4 debates if you include the town hall, so why aren't there 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats? Isn't it supposed to be fair and balanced? But obviously, no. And we know how fair and balanced the mainstream media is. Okay, folks, I've got to stop on that rant. Let's see how we're doing for time. Well, actually, I think it's time for our last commercial. And then I'll choose one of my last. I have a whole bunch of topics, but I'll choose one for the final few minutes. So, folks, here we go. Final commercial here. I will be back.
Hello, Americans. It's Uncle Sam here. If you owe $10,000 or more on your federal or state income taxes, I've got important news that may help you negotiate a lower tax bill. The IRS, with their Fresh Start initiative, is offering more flexible terms to Americans looking to settle their IRS debt. They can help you lift your wage garnishments, stop bank levies, and put your tax problem behind you once and for all. If you owe tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars to the IRS or state, our team of tax professionals can resolve your case and stop collection actions against you. Even if you've been audited or haven't filed a return in years, we can help. Call right now and find out if you qualify to settle your debt for far less than what you owe. 800-357-8110. 800-357-8110. 800-357-8110. 800-357-8110.
The offer of a franchise can only be made through delivery of a franchise disclosure document. Imagine yourself being a leader in America's fastest growing demographic category. More than 10,000 people a day turn 65, and a large percentage are going to need a helping hand at home or in choosing the right assisted living community. Always Best Care is looking for people who've excelled at everything they've done, but they're seeking a new challenge. Always Best Care is one of the fastest growing companies in this explosive field. We're looking for 25 new franchisees to keep our booming business growing. We'll back you up with the strongest award-winning marketing program in the industry, and we'll provide the special training and support that's fueled our growth to prepare you for this great opportunity. All that's missing is you. Call Always Best Care toll-free at 1-800-643-7508. That's 1-800-643-7508. For Always Best Care, 1-800-643-7508. Call today.
You're listening to Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio, broadcast on the internet, and also available at archives.patrickcomelately.us, a proud member of the Red Nation Rising Radio Network. Just a quick interlude here, and I'm not turning this into a beer podcast, but in the breaks, I have to say I've been drinking a stein of my one of my homebrewed beers, and this time I have a nice summer beer, which comes from Germany, from the Berlin area, and once was described by Napoleon's troops as the champagne of the north. It's a very low ABV. It's about 3% ABV. Some people call that near beer, so not too strong, but nice summer beer. Slightly sour, slightly acidic because it's fermented in a special way. Very highly carbonated. So it's I'd almost say kind of a soda pop kind of thing, but it is beer. And the Germans drink it with a little shot of fruit syrup in. They call it Mitschuss, which sweetens it a little bit to counteract the acidic in the beer. Great summer drink, really nice summer drink. It's Berliner Weisse is the name, means Berlin wheat beer, but it's different to most other wheat beers. Very nice beer. But anyway, sorry, just a little side note there. But in the remaining minutes, want to talk about something else that happened. A lot of things that we could talk about, but I want to do this one because I think it shows how Trump reacts, how Trump is. And this is about the trip that King Barry made to the G20 meeting in China. And of course, we know what happened at the airport, where the Chinese didn't have the the proper steps to allow King Barry to come out of the plane and wave from the normal door. He basically had to come out out of the servants' entrance. I'm not sure if that was a built-in stairway and not the airport stairway. There was no red carpet for him. In other words, they were disrespecting him. And Donald basically said if he'd have had that happen to him, because especially the other world leaders had been treated with a much grander welcome, he would have said, "Thank you very much, fellas. That's okay. Close it up. Let's go back to Washington." And I think that's really the kind of thing that Trump would do. He couldn't give two hoots about the diplomatic niceties and everything if they don't, if they disrespect him and America that way. That's exactly what he would do. Now, you should say, "Oh, but the storm in a teacup and this, that, and the other." No. What you have to realize, and I think this is something that many Americans, many Europeans even, do not realize, that was a huge disrespect that the Chinese were doing. A huge one, and very politically very, very important. One of the things that I learned having lived out in Asia, I've mentioned this a few times, I've lived out there. One of the things that is very, very important to Chinese people is face, is saving face. You cannot lose face. And basically what the Chinese did, they made Barry lose face. And that's why it is so hugely important. Now, we might look at it and say, "Oh, well, so he had to use a different set of steps." But there was no red carpet ready. There were no steps ready. That is not the way you treat someone. That was done deliberately as an act of disrespect. And while the Americans may not realize how huge a one it was a huge one. And that's why Donald Trump, who's done a lot of business with the Chinese, knew exactly how much of an insult that was. And that's why I agree with him. When I heard about this, when I heard that this had happened to Barry, the first thing I thought was, if I'd have been president, I would have said, "You know what, folks? Too bad. I can't make it. We're going to go back. We're going to go back to Washington," and done that. And then, so Donald Trump voiced those same words. He knows that would have been exactly the right reaction. And that would have happened once, and it would never happen again, believe me, because the Chinese would have been called on it, and then they would have been the ones losing face, because the way they did it and Barry accepted it, that meant he lost face. If he'd have stood up to it and said, "No, you've disrespected me, I'm going," that would have actually rebounded on them. It would have reflected on them, and they would have lost face. Now, here in America, we sort of say, "Oh, no, he's a petulant child," and they can laugh at him. "Oh, we scared him off." That's not the way it works to the Eastern, to the Chinese mind. It would have been, "No, we were trying to disrespect him. He called us on it. We got caught out. We are the ones that lose face." And that's why Donald Trump was 100% right in what he said. So, okay, folks, we're at the end of the show, and I see time has gone very, very quickly. So I do need to end up because I'm actually over my time. So I'm going to say TTFN, folks. It was great talking to you, and talk to you in 3 weeks' time. Do listen to the recordings. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the show. I hope that you enjoyed tonight's topics. Whether you listened live, to a recording, or to a rebroadcast, I appreciate the time you share with me. We need to spread the message of liberty far and wide, so please tell your friends and family about the show. Thank you for helping to keep the beacon of hope burning. This is Stefan, your Patrick Come Lately, signing off. God bless America, and remember, L3, Long live liberty.